Welcome to the Ultra World Podcast, the soccer fan's voice from the stands, with your hosts, Marc and Sean Castles, coming to you from Radio Waves Studios in New York City. Now, let's kick off the show.
Well, hi again, everybody. I am indeed Marc and Sean Castles is alongside, and tonight, my friend, we are venturing into uncharted waters for us.
Yes, we are always about community, but we keep talking about soccer fan community, and this time we're going to get more into the actual sports side, a little bit of refereeing, a little bit of coaching, and really dive into a little bit of the U.S. youth sports too. We have joining us today Peter and Julia Green. Hey guys, how's it going?
Hey, it's going. How are you?
Going great.
Excellent. Well, thank you guys for joining us here on the Ultra World Podcast. I'm just going to dive in and start asking you guys some questions here.
You're talking to referees and you're mentioning diving. That's just not a good way to start.
They know that
Yellow
there's a
card.
flop there. Yellow card right there. As long as I don't get two, I'm not out there. So, guys, I want to start off to give our little audience a little background of your soccer story so that we can set the table for some of these other questions. How did you guys get into soccer? I'll start with you, Julia, and then I'll go over to Peter.
So, when my son was about 5 years old, we knew he was different. He could talk about photosynthesis on a cellular level at 5 years old. He could read before he was 2. He was just a really interesting little boy. And we thought, oh, hey, maybe he's gifted and talented. But like so many other parents, we found out that our son had autism. When we were going through that journey, one doctor said to me, if he doesn't have a lot of friends, it's okay. It might bother you, but it won't bother him. And then they said, oh, and don't expect him to ever play group sports. And for me, that was challenge accepted. Immediately I looked for a sport that I thought he could handle because I know him so well. And soccer came to mind. Before that, I'd been to 2 soccer games and I was kind of okay with the sport.
This is her baptism by fire.
I was dating a lovely Englishman from the UK and I was visiting there at the time that I was introduced to soccer. And it was a Chelsea Man U game at the O2. And then after that, I was invited to the Premier League's championships. I got to watch Chelsea and Man U face off again in the Orangery at Kensington Palace.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really cool. And then John Terry ended up on his back. And in a shootout. So that was my first experience with soccer.
So you went right to the top. You went right in for the best. No high school watching. No.
No, I'm very Forrest Gumpy, and just about everything I do, I seem to fall in from the top down.
That's awesome.
That is nice to have a box of chocolates there. So
Yes. So I found an indoor sports complex called Arizona Sports Complex. I had a meeting with the general manager and I said, hey, my son has autism. There could potentially be meltdowns. There could potentially be emotional crises. And rather than me sort of dumping him into a coach's lap, could I go through all of the background checks and all of the things and the trainings? And could I be his assistant through this learning process? And they had never done it before, and they were amazed that a parent with an autistic child would actually want to do that. Most parents are looking for a way to warehouse their kids. I started out with him at a camp, in a summer camp, and it was a 4-hour event, so I didn't know how well he would do. But we hung in there, and he got all the way about halfway through and started to struggle a little bit. And when that happened, I would take him out and kind of have the talks, and if I felt like he could get back in it, we would go back in it. And if I felt like he'd had enough for the day, well, then we would just excuse ourselves quietly. That's kind of how it started. And then we went into regular academy and a little league play. My son would tolerate probably about 10 to 15 minutes at a time. And then he'd kind of get into this, okay, I'm bored, I think I want to leave mode. And he built up a tolerance. we'd just push him a little farther, push him a little farther. And at the end of year one, he was able to play by himself on the field without my prompting him.
Wow.
Yeah, but I mean, being out on the field with him always made me feel just a little more comfortable. You know, I could look at him and go, hey, it's coming to you. Be ready, it's coming to you. It was really fun because we did it together and he was able to like integrate. And then the coach that we worked with was just this lovely, lovely Latino man. We called him Coach Marco. And his daughter, her name was Jasmine, was also a coach. And their teams would actually play each other. So there was some rivalry there that was really fun to watch between the father and daughter. And they knew Axel's story really well. They taught him so much, and they set up set up a goal, I should say, for Axel so that both teams actually fed him the ball at some point and just let him go to town. And you've never experienced those kind of happy tears when you have a child that's unique.
And he scored a goal. It was amazing.
Oh, man.
It was fantastic. And he looked at me and he goes, I love this game.
Yes.
And that was it. That was the hook for us. That was, it was amazing and it was exciting. And it was just, that's when my heart, forget the O2 and watching Chelsea and Man U play, watching my son score that goal was just a pinnacle for me. I fell in love with the game. I fell in love with the reaction. I loved working with the kids. And I just kept learning from Coach Marco for like the next almost 4 years. And they became our soccer family.
I have a couple questions here because this is really a fantastic story. There are a lot of parents out there that would, I'm sure, like to know how they could bring something like this into their lives, also dealing with autism. How old was Axel when you took the leap into having him play youth sports?
About 6.5, 7-ish.
Is there anything for other parents who have an autistic child and yet, hey, they want to give this a shot? Is there anything since that has happened that they could use to dive into their own version of getting their kid involved and trying out the same thing?
I think the biggest thing about being a parent of an autistic kid is advocating. If you see something and there's a roadblock, you got to find your way around it or over it or under it, but communicate.
Yeah.
Go to the people that run the show and say, listen, I'm willing to help you. I know my son's abilities. I know the signs. I know when he makes a fist or shrugs his shoulders or has a look of stress, that it's time for me to take him off the field and give him a brain break for a minute. You just really have to go to the people, the powers that be, and you have to communicate your willingness and have a plan, what you're willing to do.
I think the other important thing is to understand Julia was on the field with him. She wasn't touching the ball, but it's not like she was in the box, because we were playing indoor.
Yeah.
She was on the field and functioning as his aide.
We were learning Maradonas together.
Yes, for that first 6 months until he got comfortable, and then she got into the box with the other coach. The other thing that I think is important is because Julia did this when he was so young, other parents didn't complain. Like if you tried to do this with a high school kid,
Yeah.
it might be a problem. Though I will tell you for later, Julia took several autistic teenagers on on her club team that nobody else would have taken. So we went in eyes open. And then thirdly, we got lucky with Coach Marco. He was this amazing man, former gangbanger who was a general manager of Enterprise Rent-A-Car and just was a good-hearted person who was open and understanding about Axel and didn't roll his eyes and go, oh, shit, I got to take this kid on my team. To the point where we used to have him and his family over for barbecues. I mean, they did become family.
It is building community. This is exactly what you hope soccer would bring, is building community, finding friends.
Julie can speak to this. I don't think her plan was to become a coach, but he took her under his wing because she was there. And then when we moved to Utah, she was like, you know what? Maybe I'll try coaching a team.
Well, actually, hon, the way that I got roped into coaching was that they had a lot of kids that wanted to play and they didn't have enough coaches. So I couldn't just get them on a team. The woman, the lovely lady that was running the AYSO recreational teams said, you know, if you'd be willing to coach a team, obviously we could then take him and a bunch of other kids that wouldn't otherwise get to play.
I know if I was like, hey, I'm going to go teach kids soccer, I know very little about it. I wouldn't be very good. How did that come about? What kind of training and what was that experience?
So the interesting thing was there is no training.
This is part of the problem with youth soccer.
Small town rural America, they literally hand you a ball and say, or a bag of 4 or 5 balls and say, okay, go have fun.
Good luck.
And you're just like, oh boy. So I had 3, almost 4 years of coaching with Coach Marco. Even after I wasn't on the field anymore with Axel, I was on the bench and I was still helping him from the bench. And I was there at every practice and I was there at every camp and I was there every game. I didn't miss one. We learned together. We learned the game together and I learned how to coach by watching and experiencing and learning with Axel. And so I thought, well, I'll just take what I learned from Coach Marco and bring it to this small town. I had all these parents come to me at the end of the season and tell me, my child has learned more from you in these 8 weeks than they have in the 3 or 4 years that they've been playing. And I was kind of astonished because I didn't think I was really teaching them that much. But we were undefeated.
Wow.
And the kids loved it and they wanted to play club.
What was the name of the team?
We were the Squirrels.
I love it. That's a great name.
I don't have ducks in a row. I have squirrels and they're usually at a rave. So,
Well, and it was more than just the Squirrels, right? But
well, they called themselves quietly without offending the rest of the league. They called themselves the BT Squirrels, which was the bloodthirsty squirrel.
That's got more of a ferocity to it than just plain squirrels.
and you know, look, you have this woman come in and coach and take a bunch of kids, some with on the spectrum, go undefeated, and you know, the coaching was mostly dads, you know, so they didn't take her seriously. You know, I would be there as an assistant and they'd always want to come talk to me as the coach. And I'm like, she's the
Of
coach.
course.
And the other thing, the commitment that Julia has, and I also have, you know, Julia had shirts made with squirrels on, with the kids' names on, you know, and this was us spending our own money to do it. You know, there were AYSO uniforms, but we were trying to create a sense of community and a real team spirit for this Bad News Bears group of kids we had.
We found out much later that the t-shirts we had made were very intimidating to the rest of the team.
The bloodthirsty squirrels are putting terror into the hearts of the other AYSO teams.
Oh, that's great.
Yes, and that was not my intention, but I actually rather enjoyed it, I'm not gonna lie.
And you went undefeated, so we don't apologize for winning.
No.
No, and well, and she continued to go undefeated. It wasn't just that first season. But you know, we were trying to create, you know, as Julia said, she starts at the top. This was about shirts. This was about practicing 2 to 3 times a week instead of just one like everybody else. And it was really about giving these kids an experience that they wouldn't otherwise have had. I can speak to this a little bit from Chicago, but we live in a town of 8,000 people in rural Utah, and this is a little league football and wrestling are the sports here. It was really about creating this sense of community, and selfishly, we were doing it for our son who was on the team for several seasons.
You're undefeated,
Mhm.
and of course, you probably want more. What was the next level you guys went to? I'm still blown away that they were like 6 months in. They were like, you taught my kids more because you'd think the dads would do better.
So the the interesting thing was that when they got a taste of what it was like to win and to be undefeated, they wanted to go to the local club and sign up and then play under this little club flag with other teams.
And the club was a travel.
Okay.
The games were in the Wasatch Front, like Salt Lake and a bunch of
Mm-hmm.
the big towns.
Most of them were at least 3 hours away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The weekend camps kind of things where you're taking them to a travel soccer tourney for the weekend kind of event.
Kinda. I didn't put them in tournaments initially because I didn't want it to become not fun. I didn't want them to experience a bunch of pressure while they were learning what it's like to be on a travel team or a club team. So I didn't start off doing tournaments with them. I just did the regular league stuff, traveling out to Salt Lake like, once a week and sometimes twice. And it was a lot. And then my son didn't want to play anymore. So I found myself still in love with the sport. And now, everybody else's kids are my kids. So I kept them going. They did okay. I mean, they struggled a little bit because we don't have the same level of training that most of these kids up in Salt Lake have. The more people, the more opportunities, the more
Yeah.
teachers, the more coaches, the more everything.
Starting earlier.
The other thing Julia did is they have tryouts where all the coaches watch several days and you're watching, and then you make bids for kids, right? And a couple of the coaches coach there's one high school team. So of course parents wanted their kids to play for them, and it's very political about what you need to do to play in high school. Julia brought her squirrels to the league, and most of them would not have been chosen, right? They just weren't at that level.
Mm-hmm.
So she brought this group of kids, and then we added other kids that we didn't know. But this was again a story where these kids believed in themselves and believed in what they were able to do. And we literally just moved this team of squirrels, and then we added 5 or 6 other guys to play in this travel team.
Before I ask you about what is it the underbelly look like of U.S. youth sports, you moved on from that travel team and then you started coaching at higher levels, correct?
Correct. So I was with that team for about 2 years. And when I felt like I couldn't bring more to them, like I felt like I needed to learn more and grow so that they could grow.
Makes sense.
So one of my kids, his dad had coached a few years back at the high school and was no longer coaching there. In USA Soccer Learning, there are several levels. Everyone starts out at the grassroots level. Then we take our Class D licenses, our Class C licenses, B, and obviously A. And each of those licenses are corresponding to the grassroots, very first one that you get just kind of teaches you about the kids that you're dealing with, who's in front of you. You coach who's in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
The Class D license is very similar. It's about creating the activity that gives the kids a real game-like experience and keeps you from having lulls in your practice and kind of gives you a format of how should you teach, what should you teach, and that sort of thing. And so I decided I wanted to learn more so that I could bring it back to the kids so that they can grow. And because we have some really great athletes in small town America, but they just don't have the opportunities.
Yes, that's very true.
So that's the problem that we run into. And then, if you hand somebody's mom a ball and then she hands it to a group of kids and says, play soccer, it doesn't help them understand, hey, what the field looks like, how it's divided into thirds, and how to navigate, how to even scan, or how to learn ball mastery so that you can put touches on the ball. And I decided I would hand off my squirrels to a guy with a license that was bigger than mine. And I let him have them, and he had them for a year. And I went on to learn. And as I went on my journey to learn, I still wanted to continue to coach. So I still coached recreational soccer with AYSO. Every time I've had a pretty much undefeated team.
Well, and she coached 2 teams. She had 10-year-olds and 13-year-olds. But also to clarify, Julia decided she wanted to get her Class D license, which is a lot of hours of online and in-person classes.
Yeah.
That was part of her next step, was to make the decision to do the course and get that license.
To jump in with both feet.
Right. And then I joined the Women's Soccer Network here in Utah that's run by Erin Lindley. I didn't realize how few of us there are in terms of females coaching soccer.
I'm disappointed by that because I thought the U.S. would be far and away above the global sport, but that's disappointing to hear. And yet, so is the Women's Soccer Network, is it Utah only, or is this a nationwide network?
I think it's national. The chapter that I joined is specific to Utah. So we get together with coaches that have taken their high school teams to state and won multiple years in a row. We kind of will watch each other's practices and kind of learn from each other in terms of what works and how to coach other women. And I generally don't coach women's teams or girls' teams. I usually coach boys' teams.
Well, and that's what's unusual, is having females, a woman coaching boys.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So with the Women's Soccer Network, and you joined it, did that open up new avenues, or did that just bring you to new people?
Yeah, that was a stepping stone to the Olympic Development Program. I was invited to apply. I jumped through some hoops, had some letters of recommendation, and I became part of the Olympic Development Program last year. And again, this year, I'm doing it as well.
For listeners who don't know, like I don't, so consider me unwise to this, what exactly is the Olympic Development Program?
Okay, so basically, we take the best of the best. We take 40 kids in the state of Utah. These were girls' teams, but there are boys' teams. There's a team for almost every age, starting at, I think, around 10 and 11 is mostly training. And then 12 and up, these kids will come in and they'll train for 8 weeks. The teams will get cut down to 18 kids. And then that 18 kids will represent the state of Utah in a massive tournament that takes place in Arizona. And we play against Wyoming, Hawaii, all of the Western states. And then while they're playing against, like Southern California and all these different states who also brought the best of the best, the Olympic development personnel will go out. They'll do what they call an ID session, and they will pick and choose the best kids from each team and invite them to the Olympic training camps.
This sounds a lot like in Europe, not so much in the States here. They have these, academies and stuff like that, where they're getting kids at a younger age, and across the board, they're reaching out to them. How does that, is it similar to the European style? How's that vary?
They're starting to get some of those around here too. I know the Red Bulls
have an academy.
Had an academy now for a few years.
Real Salt Lake has one too.
Yeah, I think a lot of the MLS clubs are developing them if they don't have them in place already.
Basically, once we completed that tournament and went through the ID session and all of that, we were invited as coaching staff and as players to go to Spain.
Wow.
So last May, I went to the Masi Academy in Barcelona, and I actually got to work with the Barcelona Academy coaches. Well, they're not the actual football club coaches, but the academy coaches.
That's still a big, it's a whole network. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So I got to see what they did and how they did it. And I also got to do the Danny Harka Española group. We trained there for a couple of days as well. So I got to experience these different organizations and what their academies are like. And Masi's where Lamine Yamal went.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he attended those academies.
Yeah, he started at age 7 at that academy. And there were also games, right?
Yeah, so we played friendlies, 3 friendlies.
Against academy teams.
From Spain.
Okay.
And our Utah girls actually won.
Whoa. They beat a Spanish team?
All 3 games. Yeah.
Wow.
You got some special sauce cooking over there. I mean, to beat a European team. Same age or younger? Or?
Same age. Yeah, same age. Yeah, I think one of the teams had a couple of younger kids.
Spanish parents were not happy. to
I
be
I
beaten
can
by
bet.
the Americans.
I can bet.
What was hilarious is the head coach from my team, he's this lovely Englishman. He's the director of coaches for the Liverpool academies in Utah, and his name is Stuart Clark. And sorry, Stuart. And he was trying to console these parents, like, you guys have a really good team, pat them on the back, and it's going to be okay. It stings a little, but you're going to be fine. And these parents were like about to explode. And I was just kind of had my head down, and I was
You got off the pitch quick. Kids were going to the hotel.
going to be an international incident if somebody doesn't shut him up soon.
The great thing, and I didn't get to go, but I saw video, was the girls from our team and the girls from the teams they played then got together on the field after the game when the dust had settled, and we're singing together, and we're, didn't speak the same language, but we're being girls together, right?
So some of them spoke English and some of our girls spoke Spanish. Stuart Clark, he would put them together and tell them to make a TikTok.
Ooh, nice.
And so they did. I mean, TikTok is like international for these kids.
Yep.
And it was so cute because the games were intense. And after the games, I would hear girls go, "Oh my gosh, she's so nice." We get on the field and we're kind of enemies. And then
Yep.
we finish up and it's like everyone's hugging and making lifelong friends.
That's fantastic. That sportsmanship is so important.
Yeah, it was so fantastic. And Stuart was really good at that. So I will give him props for that.
So, based on what you saw over there in Europe and your experience, I'm going to just kind of dive into here of what your guys' current experience and thoughts are on the current U.S. youth soccer movement, how it funnels into the U.S. national teams, men's and women's. I'm just going to kind of throw that at you guys and kind of get your thoughts there on how America's doing in terms of soccer.
Well, I can't speak for like America as America. I can speak for the small town rural communities are experiencing in terms of soccer. And I know what the city soccer looks like. And I know there are tons of athletes out there that are underdeveloped. And I feel like we in the US tend to make money off of everything, every
Private equity.
teeny tiny thing. And so, like, if you have a club team, they're like, oh, you should own a Veo. And then you get the Veo camera so parents who can't travel can watch the game, but then everybody has to pay to watch the game. So, youth sports should never be a pay per play kind of environment.
Amen.
And the kids who have may not be the best athletes, but they'll get better training because their parents can afford to do that. And then you run into like a city like mine, where the main goal for the club team here was to feed the high school team. I don't want to use the word incestuous, but I will. The woman who's the president of the main club here, her husband is also like the head coach for the boys and a women's soccer team at the high school, and they always kind of preface their tryouts with, oh, well, if you played club soccer, you have a better shot at getting on the team. And they usually will take the last team in the age group at the high school level. In other words, you'll have a dad who will coach these kids, and he may have played in high school, he may not have, but not usually college. And he will take that team from the time they're 7 years old, and he will keep these kids together for as long as he can, maybe adding and subtracting one or two kids, all the way up to like, their freshman or sophomore year in high school. And then they get handed off to the high school, and they're expected to play at these higher levels. And generally, soccer doesn't become the priority sport. These kids all play all the different sports.
That also sounds like if my kid and he's 8 or 9 or 10 that he wants to get into soccer after watching the World Cup, the teams are already decided. Like there's already a click.
Exactly. Yes.
And that's a problem.
Yep. These kids will play on a team together all the way up through. And the biggest problem I find, like locally, is that there are not a lot of trained coaches, and B, the few that there are all sort of belong to this clique, this other club that's out there.
Yeah.
So I decided in July, I finally said, okay, I'm doing this. And I started my own training academy.
Nice.
That's so cool.
And so
What's it called? What's the name?
it's called the Dark Horse Football Club.
Dark Horse. I love it. That's a great name.
Yeah, I thought it was cool. And so my plan is to teach them as much as I can and to grow coaches. I want to get to a place where giving coaches the training that they need. And then, if they want to play club, then we'll be independent of this other organization that's in our town and we'll play.
The other thing that's important, and Landon Donovan's been talking about this, it's been all over sports podcasts and TV and radio, the pay to play system, and it's not just soccer. Our town is an oil town. Most of the families here work in the oil fields.
Hmm.
But there's not a ton of money here. And the big club teams in Salt Lake, kids are paying $3,000 to play
Jeez.
for a season, which means the coaches get paid, there's
Yeah.
uniforms, there's all this stuff. In our town, nobody can afford that.
Yeah.
Coaches aren't paid. Julia's never been paid. It's all volunteer. But you know what? Little League baseball's like that too. My business partner's son is a D1 prospect and he's going into ninth grade. They're spending 20 grand a year, probably. So if you're not wealthy and there aren't scholarships, then you've got to find sponsors. And so the most talented kids aren't necessarily getting the opportunities. It's the kids who are privileged. And that's a problem. When you look at Lionel Messi's story, when Barcelona recruited him to their academy, they flew him and his family to Barcelona and they put the investment into him that his family didn't have to pay to be there.
Right.
Yep.
It's the complete opposite of the way things work in our country. And I think the other thing, and I'll let Julia talk again, I was heard something just today. Most of the kids that are moving up levels are playing for the MLS team academies. But that means if you're not a part of one of those academies, you're not playing at the Galaxy Academy or the Real Salt Lake Academy, you may not have opportunities. It's part of why Julia's starting her own. Salt Lake's too far for someone to drive back and forth to
Yeah.
do Real Salt Lake. The system is pay to play is a problem if you want to compete on the international level. I mean, I think that's been the headline coming out of the World Cup.
It's my understanding that in Europe, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the teams go to the town and say, we're going to mine the whole town for talent.
Yep.
All the kids are welcomed for tryouts. All the kids are welcome to the young group. And we're going to find the best of them and cultivate them across. So every kid is getting involved without having to spend some money. Like Arsenal is spending their own money, correct? They're not asking kids to pay or the families to pay.
Right.
It really should come from, if MLS wants to be doing it, to really do it top down and really move across the board there and try and get as many kids involved as possible.
And the thing is that even if they came here, we have these really good athletes. They couldn't tell you before I got a hold of them what position number 1 was on the field, which is your goalkeeper. They couldn't tell you what each position did. They could tell you where a winger was and kind of what their job was, but they couldn't really tell you. If someone said, go play the 11, they'd be like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
I mean, and look, that's the problem with volunteer coaching.
So you have to give them a foundation before these people, even if they came here looking for talent, you would have to give these kids a foundation. And that was the biggest problem I found, was that our kids, soccer didn't catch on here until probably the last maybe 10 years. Our kids dad throws a football as soon as they can walk.
And baseball.
There's a T-ball stand. Yeah, there's all of these things. But our kids, they didn't have pickup soccer fields. They didn't have like a field to just go out and play a game of pickup soccer.
Look, we have problems finding fields. There's a million baseball fields, and you compete for fields in our town, and they're not maintained very well at all just because there's no money. But the big thing I think Julia saw was you have parents coaching who are trying to do the best they can, but they're all about scrimmaging and let's win games. And Julia came in and said, no, I'm going to teach you how to trap. I'm going to teach you
Just something simple like receiving.
how to move without the ball. I'm going to teach you about triangles on the field. A lot of these other coaches rolled their eyes. What's all this teaching? This is about winning games. And the mantra, she just started doing some sessions with a new group of kids. And after the first one again, the mom came up and said, they just learned more with you in an hour and a half than they learned in an entire season of club soccer, because nobody is teaching. And that's the problem.
And yet there's still a handout from like private equity to like, hey, pay us for jerseys and stuff and the cameras without actually getting something out of it that the kids can watch a professional soccer game and be like, I know what's going on there.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they don't even watch them. It was like pulling teeth for me to get kids to just watch.
She gave homework to watch games in between. We tell them when there were international games on and you needed to watch.
I would take that homework. I would be up for that. I do that homework every weekend.
Right.
Well, this is turning into such a great conversation that we're going to be going into overtime here. So we're going to pick this up in the next week's episode.
I have to say, Peter and Julia, this is episode 40 of the Ultra World podcast. I have never, in any of the previous 39 editions, found myself saying, wow, as much as I have hearing your stories. It's just, I'm gobsmacked by all of it, and I'm so inspired, too. I want to come play.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Come on over. You can guest coach. I'll teach you.
Come on out.
As we wrap this up, when you head out this weekend to find your football family, don't forget it's opening day across the English Premier League. My new obsession, Ipswich, home for Sunderland to kick off the new season. Also, Serie A. We've got Ligue 1 in France. It's match day 2 for La Liga. My Jersey guy, Pellegrino Matarazzo, going to be coaching Real Sociedad on the road, Sean, against Real Madrid. I'm picking an upset.
You are? Whoa. I mean, they did win the cup, but that's shots fired.
Well, we need to fire some shots. I'm all fired up. Peter, Julia, Sean, thank you so much for joining us. It really has been a pleasure. For Sean Castles, I'm Marc Renee. We'll catch you next time.
This has been the Ultra World Podcast, the soccer fan's voice from the stands, with your hosts, Marc Renee and Sean Castles. Our executive producer is Sue Zizza. Marc Renee and Sean Castles are co-producers. David Shin is our master engineer. Assistant producer Avery Gehrig, and I'm Alicia Antwine. To be a guest on the Ultra World podcast or learn all about sponsorship opportunities, send an email to ultraworldpod@gmail.com. Be sure to follow the show on all the social media platforms at Ultra World Pod. Copyright 2026. All rights reserved, Ultra World Podcast, LLC.